All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. I am excited to get to speak to you today about Jane Austen, wearing my Regency attire, having a great time over here in Dickinson. So I am going to share my screen quickly and we will get started. All right. So today we're going to go over a little bit of, Jane Austen history, a little of her major life happenings. We will engage in a little speculation as to why she, is still enjoyed in modern times. And then we'll take a look at, where Jane Austen is right now. So early life, she was born December 16th, 1775, in Hampshire, England. She was the seventh child of George and Cassandra Austen. Her father was a clergyman, and, lived a quiet country life. She was educated at home, but she traveled all around visiting her older brothers. She started writing early, including some early drafts of her later published works. Some of the things she wrote during this period were sent to publishers and they were rejected out of hand, or the publisher just sat on them and didn't publish it. Frustrating things that would happen to young female authors or authors in general. When her father retired, she moved with her parents and sister to Bath. And then when her father died, the Austen women moved to Southampton. And they didn't stay there very long, but they moved to Chawton in 1809, and that's when Jane Austen's writing really took off. She published Sense and Sensibility in 1811. She published Pride and Prejudice in 1813, Mansfield Park in 1814, Emma in 1815, and she finished Persuasion in 1816, but it wasn't published during her lifetime. And those first four works, they were all published anonymously. They were credited to a lady. So no one knew who wrote them. They just knew that they liked it and wanted to read more from a lady. So Jane Austen, started having health problems in 1817, 1816, 1817. People speculate now that she was suffering from Addison's disease, which is when your adrenal glands don't make enough cortisol. And so, like with most illnesses involving hormones, it's a pretty slow, miserable way to die. But she rallied. She started writing Sanditon, but she wasn't able to complete it. In April of 1817, she wrote her will, naming Cassandra, her sister, her heir. In May, they moved to Winchester to be closer to the doctor, but Jane Austen eventually died on July 18th, 1817, at the age of 41. So her brother Henry published Persuasion and Northanger Abbey at the end of 1817. And they were the first two credited directly to Jane Austen, and a biographical notice in those books credited the first four novels to her. So in total, Jane Austen wrote 6 novels that were published, 4 during her lifetime and 2 posthumously. So we're left to wonder why Jane Austen She lived a quiet life. She didn't have huge popularity during her life. People liked her work, but people also didn't like her work. And so there's really not a good explanation for why, we still enjoy Jane Austen so much today. So now we enter into the speculative portion of today's presentation. So some people will say it's theme and plot. A large income is the best recipe for happiness I ever heard of, is a quote from Mansfield Park. And money really does play a big role in, I would say, most of Jane Austen's novels. There's always, some sort of financial insecurity going on. In Mansfield Park, Fanny Price, the heroine of the story, she is sent to live with richer relatives because her family has too many children and not enough money. Pride and Prejudice, it's a family with 5 daughters, and only a man can inherit the family estate. So no one knows what's going to happen to them if they don't get married. And so, marriage and money, play a big role, as well as, I would say, relationships between parents and children, women and men, and what those relationships look like and how they grow, still very much resonates with a modern audience. So those are all possibilities on, on what's resonating with modern readers. Character is another possibility that kicks around. So the opening line to Pride and Prejudice: "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife." And so the thing about characters in Jane Austen is all of them have flaws. There is not a perfect, character out there. And she even, went out and said that that's why she was better than some of her contemporaries. She addressed a barb specifically at Fanny Burney, who was writing at about the same time, and basically saying that her heroines were boring and insipid because they were just so perfect. But take Elizabeth Bennet, the heroine of Pride and Prejudice. While she is very smart and witty, she's too smart for her own good sometimes. She thinks she knows everything, but she is missing key information. And then you have Darcy, who thinks he's better than anyone, but really he has room for improvement too. And it's true of all of the novels. Emma is perhaps a good example. The heroine, Emma Woodhouse, again, thinks she's all that in a bag of chips, but she's always meddling in other people's lives. And Mr. Knightley, the hero of the story, he's probably the closest to a perfect man that Jane Austen ever wrote. But he has his faults too. So the characters, you can really sink your teeth into them and relate to them because they have their bad points too. And, you can see yourself and the people around you. And because the characters have their flaws, watching them interact with each other, that is enjoyable too. Whoops. A double click. Place is another possibility. So this quote from Persuasion: "All must linger and gaze on a first return to the sea, whoever deserves to look on it at all." And so the interesting thing about Jane Austen is she is writing about real places. You know, the estates are, you know, fictional. Perhaps some of the towns, but she's writing about real places. The Jane Austen Society of North America, there is a one page on their website where people have actually mapped out, you know, the worlds of the Jane Austen books, and so you can see. Oh goodness, sorry. Where, you know, people traveled, you know, how far did the Dashwood sisters go when they moved to, oh goodness, my brain, to Barton Cottage? You know, how far away was that? When Lizzie went on vacation with her aunt and uncle, you know, how far away was Derbyshire? And so, you know, you can get a real feel for England as Jane Austen knew it, because she's writing about real places. So these are all potential reasons for why Jane Austen is popular today. I'll be honest, I don't know that we'll ever know the answer for sure. And everyone is going to have their own opinion. But the fact remains, Jane Austen is, you know, still immensely popular. Pride and Prejudice has never been out of print. And we're seeing, you know, Jane Austen everywhere. So let's talk a little bit about where we see Jane Austen in film. We have a wide variety of options out there, ranging from the extremely faithful to the book Sense and Sensibility by Emma Thompson, a great interpretation. We have the 6-hour Pride and Prejudice miniseries, which is my favorite and used to watch it way too frequently. Then we have some like the Frances O'Connor appearance in Mansfield Park, which is fairly faithful to the book, but, you know, throws in some more, you know, modern issues. We have Clueless, which is my favorite Emma interpretation, I think, you know, right up there with Gwyneth Paltrow. But Clueless is very good, you know, throwing Jane Austen into the modern world. And then we have Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, you know, throwing Jane Austen into the horror movie mix. You know, there's a Jane Austen interpretation for everyone. And they've even done some of her juvenilia, like Love and Friendship. I believe Prime Video did a rendition of that one. And so they're really, you know, Jane Austen is everywhere on the big screen. And in print, you know, besides your plain, you know, plain Jane, you know, just reading the books, we have the the horror remixes. There's Pride and Prejudice and Zombies and Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters. I am a bigger fan of Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, just because it was so ridiculous. And it spawned, that one spawned an additional spinoff, Dawn of the Dreadfuls, which is the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. So a prequel to Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I am personally the proud owner of Little Miss Austen, Pride and Prejudice. And, big fan of One English Village, Two Rich Gentlemen. I have read it to all of my children numerous times. If you don't have it, you should buy it for your expecting friends. And I also discovered that they have done manga versions. So there's, an Emma pictured there. So for your graphic novel lovers, you have those options out there too. So lots of different, interpretations, ways to enjoy Jane Austen. So I completely understand if you want to learn more. I, talk way too fast on these, so I think I will click through these links and let you see some of them, and then I'll share them in the chat as well when I'm done sharing my screen. But we'll hop out to the Jane Austen Society of North America. So we have lots of fun resources here. They're celebrating Austen at 250 as well. So lots of good, fun information here. Anyone interested in seeing the maps of the novels I was talking about? So the map of Sense and Sensibility. So they start in Sussex and they go oh goodness. Oh, and here's Barton Park over here. So they drove, rode in a horse and carriage quite a way. But they were much closer to London when they lived at Norland. But these maps are fun to look at. The Jane Austen Society is, like the British version of JASNA. So they have, the same biography information, just organized in a different way. And if you want to, accumulate some knowledge before our trivia on, on Jane Austen's birthday in December, there is a wealth of Jane Austen quizzes on this page, at least 13 pages worth of them. And you can find out how much you know or don't know about Jane Austen and all of her awesomeness. Oops, what are you doing? Okay, this is my contact information. I, my day job is public library specialist, but if you ever want to talk about Jane Austen, I'm down for that too. So I have plenty of time for questions. So if you have any, go ahead and throw them in the chat, and I'm going to quick share some links for you guys. Yep, everything is via Teams. I actually find the novels really easy to read, especially if you like Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice. The movies are almost direct, from page to film. I am not a personal member of JASNA, unfortunately, but there's lots that you can access on their website without being a member. I see Tammy furiously typing away, so I think she might be finding the links for you. Yes.
Okay, Monica, so let's say that someone's never read a Jane Austen novel, never watched any of the movies. What would you recommend as the first one and why?
I would recommend starting with Pride and Prejudice because it is by far the most engaging, I think. And it has the most hilarious characters. Followed pretty closely by Emma. But one thing you kind of notice as her novels get older, as she's getting closer to the end of her life, they become a bit more serious. Perhaps you can sense maybe a little bit of sorrow that she never met her Mr. Darcy, or if some people say she found her Mr. Darcy but wasn't, allowed to marry him, which is, kind of a theme in Persuasion, being persuaded not to marry, the guy you really love. But for lighthearted fun, Pride and Prejudice and Emma, top notch. The ones you should start with.
Okay.
Or if you don't want to read, start by watching the Pride and Prejudice miniseries, because even though it's 6 hours of your life, it's 6 hours well spent because it's exactly the same as reading the book. Personal opinion. Well, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and learn and watch me hang out in my elbow length gloves.
Sounds good. You look great, Monica.
Oh, I should wear this every day, except it's really hard to type in elbow length gloves.
Yeah, trade-offs.
Yep. But yes, thank you all for coming, and I hope you are able to check out some stuff later in the coming month.